Hey mamas, and welcome back to another episode of the Knit and Tell Fridays. This one is a special one, and you're going to find out in just a second if you haven't figured it out yet. But I'm excited to share some updates, and I also have some news on my current knitting project. So let's dive in. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away. Are you a mom who feels overwhelmed, craving a creative outlet, but unsure where to start or how to fit it into your already packed day? I have dedicated this podcast to help you discover practical, guilt-free self-care strategies through the calming practice of knitting. I'll help you break free from the overwhelm, quiet the noise and comparison of social media, empowering you to pick up your knitting needles instead and embrace moments of rest, creativity, and mindfulness. Hi, I'm Nadine, a mom, wife, and passionate knitter. I first learned to knit as a teenager from my grandmother back in Germany, but for some reason, I put my needles down in my 20s. It wasn't until 2020, when everyone was searching for ways to ease the anxiety of the unknown, that I picked knitting back up, and something amazing happened. I found peace and joy in the cozy, calming rhythm of knitting, and now I'm so excited to share my practical tips and habits with you so you can reclaim your time, recharge, and rediscover the things that bring you happiness. It's time to ditch the endless scroll on social media and focus on what truly matters, your well-being. So if you're ready to take control of your stress, ditch overwhelm and social media comparison, rekindle your creativity, and recharge with a hobby you love, this podcast will guide you every step of the way. Take a deep breath, grab your knitting needles, and let's start creating a life with less stress and more joy, one stitch at a time. Did you hear that? Yes, we got a facelift and we have a new name here on the podcast. We are now the Knit Your Stress Away podcast, and I want to share a couple of thoughts about why that name change has occurred. But first, I want to invite you to the next Knit and Chill Circle. You know, that is a monthly get-together, fun space to chat about your projects, share your progress, knit. If that's the only time you'll ever have in a month, come join us in the Knit and Chill Circle. It happens once a month over in the Knitting Mamas community. The next one is on Wednesday, October 16th at 1 p.m. EST. Hop on over in the Knitting Mamas community, into the Knitting Mamas community. It's at theknittingmamas.com/group. Yes, I also finally figured out a way to make this more seamless for you and an easy to remember link. So I'm putting that into the show notes. It's a free group, free to join, perfect for anybody who's looking for community, also beginners of this knitting craft who want to find support to get started. And also sometimes you need the courage and the encouragement to actually get started. Am I right? So this is the perfect place. Once again, theknittingmamas.com/group. All right, let's talk about the Knit Your Stress Away podcast. I'm so excited because I'm finally feeling like it's fully aligning with the purpose right here and the why of this podcast. I am here and my mission is to help overwhelmed moms find calm and relaxation through the craft of knitting, just like it happened for me when I picked up my needles again in 2020 after I took about a 20-year break, and find that same kind of, stress relieving and overwhelm busting feeling that you get from simply making something and creating something. And as much as I loved the Knitting Mamas, and that is still, obviously, this is still the brand. We are still the Knitting Mamas. We are still the Knitting Mamas community. Nothing has changed. But for the podcast to feel a bit more aligned with the mission and inviting you, the mama who may not be knitting yet, but who is thinking about it and who definitely and desperately needs an outlet, a creative outlet, or finding that passion again for something that you have sort of left in your life before momhood, right? It's for you. And this is why I have changed it, because it truly is what the title now says. We are knitting our stress away, and I want to invite everyone who is even just considering a creative outlet, a creative hobby for stress relief into this world, into this podcast, and into this mission. So you all know from the title, from the things that we talk about on this podcast, that knitting is not only something that you feel like can really help you, but it's actually scientifically proven through many studies that it can reduce stress, encourage more self-care, bring more joy, but also, decrease anxiety. And there are so many reasons why that's the case. So it's the absolute perfect hobby for anybody who feels like they need something in their life that kind of decompresses it and de-stresses it and slows it down. And we still have the same great content on this podcast. I'm so very excited for what's to come down the road as we go into the winter season, into the perfect knitting season and beyond. And we still have the same great content coming for you, but with a name now that I think better fits the mission. So with that said, I hope you guys enjoy the new face of the Knit Your Stress Away podcast from the Knitting Mamas, and let's dive in. So, as you know, my name is Nadine. I'm here to host this podcast for you every week. We have usually 2 episodes per week. One is a episode that comes out on Tuesdays, is more of a practical tips, self-care, how to kind of de-stress, how to weave more knitting into your life, why knitting is the best tool for that, and so on. And then on Fridays, we do this fun little knit and tell episode every Friday where I'm talking about my current project or what I'm loving right now when it comes to knitting, maybe something that I haven't done in a while that I had to do that was challenging because, just because you have knitted for years does not mean that there is never something that can come up that is challenging that I have to actually look up how to do. I am also talking about what's going on right now, anything new like the Knit and Chill Circle that is coming up soon, as well as what I'm currently reading. So let's dive in. And if you listened last week on Friday, I was still finishing my landscape wrap from Two of Wands, which is a gorgeous triangle scarf knit in stripes, but it has some really cute and unusual transitions between the colors, which was such a fun thing to knit. I really, really loved knitting those transitions particularly, but the entire shawl was really fun to knit. And I'm done. I am so happy to report that I'm finally done, and I actually was able to open the whole thing up now because, as you know, I knit on round needles. So round needles are those that are connected by a cable, which is so much easier for me because it distributes the weight of your project much better, and it's not very hard on your wrists and on your hands. But what it does when you have a large project like this scarf that I just knitted is it bunches it up. So you can't truly stretch it out. You couldn't do it on straight needles either because it's just that long. Like one row was over 300 stitches. So, it got really big. But there was never a time when I'm actually really seeing what I'm making. And that's sort of unusual. When you make a sweater, when you make a smaller, infinity scarf or just a straight scarf, that usually doesn't happen. And you can pretty well see what you're making as you go along. But for this one, it was just like, oh, wow, I just can't wait to open it. So once I was done and I cast it off, it was just, it just unfolded really in front of me. And it was just so beautiful. And my daughter was like, oh, can I have that? So I guess we're sharing it now, like we do with many, of my completed projects. And yeah, I'm just happy that I got it done right in time for fall because it'll be such a great little scarf to put over my shoulders when we sit outside, when it gets a little bit cooler. So the only thing that I have now left to do is weaving in the ends, which can take a little bit because I had so many color transitions in here. So there was 5 total color changes. But because the transition was a bit unusual, you actually had to do the color change twice per row or per change. So that resulted in quite a few strings that are still hanging off of the side. So I'm working on that. But the beautiful thing about weaving in ends of your project is that sometimes people might think it's boring. But for me, it's a great opportunity to have some mindless knitting, which is amazing because you have something to do with your hands. You feel productive and you feel busy, but at the same time, you can watch a TV show if you want and kind of relax, or you can listen to an audiobook or a podcast if you want. And you do not have to pay attention because it's just weaving in ends. And there's really, nothing else to think about. So I really, really enjoyed this project. I'm going to link it up again so that you can check it out. There were so many different color combinations for this one. It was endless and it was beautiful and it was so hard to pick. So if you are deciding to make this shawl, I would love to see it. Come on over into the Knitting Mamas community, theknittingmamas.com/group, and show us what you're making. If you're not making this one, I also want you to come in there and show us what you're making. And if you are brand new, which again, please consider coming into that group, even if you haven't started yet, because there's just so much that we can help you with. And I just can't wait for you to be part of that group and learn the craft of knitting. Now, what is on my needles now? So as you may know, I am a person who has multiple projects going at once. And the reason for that is so that I don't get bored. And if I feel like a little tired or bored with one project, I can pick up another one and switch back and forth. So this one actually has been on my needles for quite a while. I started it sometime in the summer and then put it down in favor of a gift that I made and also this landscape shawl, because that was a knit along and it had a start and an end time. Just FYI, I didn't make it by the end time. It took me a little longer. But I wanted to be part of the start of it, and that's why I kind of put this one on hold. And this is the Kayla sweater by Happy Love Co. Of course, it's going to be linked up in the show notes for you, so you can have a look. The original is in colors, it's like a white cream color and some sort of bright red, which I really like that combination, but I did not have a red like that, but I did have a rusty orangey red color, kind of like a rusty coral, I guess. And so I ended up picking that and I added a third color in, which made it really kind of the perfect fall color palette. I added like a tan color. So it's cream, tan, and this coral/rusty red. And the sweater is also kind of unusual, but so simple to make. And that is what I love about designs, that when there's something unique about them and something different about them, but it doesn't make it harder to make, which is so perfect for any beginner. So this is a cropped sweater. It has stripes, like I just mentioned, but each stripe is not only knitted in a different color, obviously, but it's also knitted in a different pattern. So you're alternating between garter stitch and stockinette. Garter stitch, if you don't know what that is a stitch that is entirely made out of knit stitches. So the front of the row and the back of the row, you knitted in knit stitch, which is literally the only stitch you need to know in order to make something beautiful. And stockinette is knit stitch on one side and purl stitch on the back side. So you're alternating between these two basic patterns, and it makes it such a fun project because it's literally never boring, because every couple of rows you change color or you change the stitch, and it's just so fun. I do hope that I get it done in time for wearing it for fall, but I'm already halfway through the second panel, which is either the front or the back. They're the same. And that's what makes this sweater also amazing for beginners, because you're knitting a front panel and a back panel that is just a large rectangle. So no decreases, no increases. And don't quote me on this, but it's probably the same for the sleeves. I don't think there's any decreases. There may be some decreases around the cuff, but I'm not even sure right now. So I will report back on that. I'm pretty sure I'm still knitting this next week when we do the next Knit and Tell Friday. So that is what's happening here right now. I am also going to tell you that we are doing some more deeper iterations, I guess, of the little tips and tricks that we talk about on the Knit and Tell Fridays at the Knitting Mamas community. Once again, I highly encourage and invite you to join us over there, theknittingmamas.com/group. You will find live videos once a week where we go deeper into the tips that I share on the podcast. This week, I skipped the tip only because I was talking about the new name and I just did not want to make this episode too long for you on a Friday. I know that your time is very precious and short, so I don't want to add to the stress of having to, listen to a very long podcast episode. So I'm going to wrap this one up for this week, and I want to wish you a wonderful weekend, and I hope I see you over in the Knitting Mamas community. Make sure you join us before the Knit and Chill Circle on October 16th, and I can't wait to see you over there. Talk to you next week. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope you're walking away with a bit more inspiration and a few ideas to make your self-care a priority. If today's chat gave you a little boost, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This helps other moms discover the podcast and start finding more calm and creativity in their day as well. And don't forget to join us over in the Knitting Mamas community on Facebook by going to theknittingmamas.com/group. Thanks again, and remember, you deserve time for yourself to recharge and feel your best. Catch you next time on the Knit the Stress Away podcast.